Mr. Gerard Balfour, who is with the IDA, and he's going to be chatting with us virtually. Mr. Balfour, are you there?
Yes, hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Mr. Balfour, and welcome to Women Voters Matters Part 1. We wish you all the best, as we do Mr. Ricardo Phillip and all the candidates who have been here with us. Ms. Terry Ince is here with us, the head of CEDAW Committee for Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm going to allow her to take the floor right now.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Balfour, and welcome. Thanks for joining us. I hope that you've been listening while you've been waiting to come on. Yes,
unfortunately,
you've been listening. Oh, no.
No.
That's okay. That's okay if you haven't been listening, but this is your opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself to the listening public, to us, and then we'll continue the conversation. Tell us a little bit about Mr. Balfour. Who is Gerard Balfour?
All right, so my name is Gerard Balfour. I'm a teacher. I'm a musician by profession. I teach. I play the steel pan. I teach the steel pan. I'm also a music producer. I compose music and write songs for different entertainers. I'm also a strong advocate for growth, development, and sustainability, in a nutshell.
That's a pretty high bar. You just sat there. You set a very high bar. So you growth, development, and sustainability, all three very key areas for us as citizens of Tobago. We would want to ensure that we have new growth. Wherever we are today, we want it to be exponentially better. We want that growth to be sustainable. So tell us, what would you do as an elected official to ensure those three things that you've just enumerated?
Well, first, the structure is very important. To have growth, you must know what you have first, so it's setting up the structure to have a working economy where we can be more of a global influence in terms of exporting, whether it's skills, talent, or manufacturing products. To bring the development, then will come the development. Once we have that structure in place, then we can see sustainable development. So some of the plans that I have is basically attacking the Constitution to ensure that things can be set up in a certain way, in a specific way, to ensure development, and the structure is the main framework. We need to work on the structure and go back to the Constitution to address things to ensure sustainability.
Right. So you're looking at constitutional change, which is not an easy thing to establish. We can agree on that. Constitutional change is not easy, but that doesn't mean it's not doable. But we have to, when you talk about growth, you talk about development, you talk about sustainability, you have to also include your manpower, your resources, the people that are in your citizenry. So how do you plan as an elected official? What would be the first thing you would do to ensure that valuable component, your people, are engaged so that you can meet that high bar of growth, development, and sustainability? What's the first thing you would do as an elected official?
Well, addressing the structure. You see, yes, the human resource is very important. What we see in this country is a lot of square pegs in round holes. So, like for instance, and I can only talk from my experience, first-hand experience, where we have plumbers working as cleaners. We have engineers who do have a job working as a carpenter, and I think that is one of the disadvantages that we have as a nation in terms of having persons within their rightful sphere. So I guess the first thing I'm going to do is deal with the structure, look for ways and means to deal with the structure so that we can have a more productive country.
Mr. Balfour, I think your contribution is very valuable. I have to ask this question in terms of the impact on women and girls in terms of business, because when we look at Tobago, we have, I would say, a not so robust private sector. Yes? And what we do need is to bolster that private sector. But while we're doing that, we have to also look at issues of equal pay. I'm gonna throw you a fireball, right? In terms of issues of equal pay for the private sector in Tobago. What do you think, or what is your perspective, or what has been your experience in terms of pay for women and men? Is there an more or less an equal pay structure in the private sector for men and women in Tobago?
All right. So my personal experience, I'm not aware of inequality where pay is concerned. But we do live in a society where gender roles are tightly drawn. So I can't speak much on that because I'm not aware of the imbalance in terms of payment between women or men.
Fair enough. Terry?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I just jumped back I want to go back to something you were saying before in terms of square pegs and round holes, and suggest that there are times when people take the jobs that are available, right? As opposed to they may be overqualified or qualified, quite qualified in one area, but that jobs in that specific field may not be available to them. However, they are able to get a job elsewhere. They're able to develop the skill, build the skill, or sometimes they already have that skill, and they can do that job because why? They have responsibilities. So again, how would you ensure that we don't have square pegs and round holes? What would you do as an elected official? What do you think can be done to ensure that people are being afforded the opportunities, given access to ensure that they are meeting their fullest potential based on the skills that they have or what they aspire to have? As an elected official, what can you do about that?
Right. So what we have currently right now is we have the structure of the system that we have right now is the government and the people. There is not enough subcommittees or middle ground in terms of programs that are easily accessible to the lower persons, for lack of better words. So I will resort right back to the structure. Of course, it's something that you need to revisit in terms of you need to actually study it, because you can't fix something without having the necessary data or the information as to how to go about. So I will resort back to actually building a middle ground between the government and the people to somewhat mitigate in terms of getting access to more programs, skill set programs, etc. We need to work on a structure where there's a middle ground between the government and the people, and that could be in many
Okay.
forms, subcommittee, etc.
All right, thank you for that. Before I pass it back to my colleague Jewel, I want to suggest that or ask if that middle ground you're alluding to, could that be a more robust private sector as opposed to just the government and the people? And they are two ends of the spectrum. Instead of programs in the middle, maybe we need to create or provide the enabling environment for the private sector to become more robust so that you see more development happen there. Just a thought. But thank you for your input, and I pass it back to my colleague, Jewel.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Terry. Mr. Balfour, before we let you go and head back to the campaign trail, which is heating up right now in Tobago and across Trinidad as well, I have a question for you because I know you're a musician. I know you're you're into steel band. It's one of the things that you do. In terms of steel band, being a panist, in terms of carnival, in terms of our festivals that include, are you seeing from your experience a lot of women not just playing pan, but becoming the lead composers, becoming the head of these of different pan yards, as we put it, and taking the lead where it comes to putting the music together and putting the bands together and really leading the charge in terms of our steel band and our steel pan music in Trinidad and Tobago? And if that is not so, what do you propose?
Well, I'm actually seeing where gender equity is being taken place, in specifically within the plant fraternity. We have a number of um, arrangers that are female. However, we don't see much pantuners in this space, and I guess that is where gender-based development comes into play. We do have a female-led Pantrimbago, but as I said, there's little to no pan tuners. It's good to see that the females are rising up. It shows that democracy is alive, and we do have equal opportunities for both male and female. It, yeah. I don't see a problem.
Yeah.
I think with time, there's not a blockage for female. Females are actually rising up in steel pan right now, so I think it's growing nice, and yeah.
I like that. And thank you for sharing that perspective with us. And Miss Ramsey Moore, we want to shout you out from Tobago here. One of, as they say here in Tobago, Awi gal, right? Miss Ramsey Moore, head of Pantrimbago. And to all the musicians and female tuners and composers and those in the field, we want to thank you for your work and to continue doing what you're doing. And Mr. Balfour, we want to thank you for being here with us today. You represent IDA and you're going up for the Tobago East seat. And we want to thank you for being here with us and sharing your views. All the best to you.
Thank you very much.
We're heading over to chat with yet another candidate, and she's also with IDA, and this is Miss Kay Trotman, and she is the candidate for Tobago West. Miss Trotman, are you here with us?
I'm here with you. I am here with you, Ms.
We're happy to have you here with us, and we wish you all the best on your campaign trail. I know that we have taken you off of the trail, and I'm hoping this will give you a few minutes downtime to relax and catch yourself, because I know you all are very busy. I'm here with the head of SUDOR Committee for Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm representing Caribbean Women in Leadership, the Trinidad and Tobago chapter. Sewell TT. And we want to talk to you this morning about your views on women's issues here in Tobago. Could you share with us what your perspective is on gender equality as it pertains to the Tobago space?
Well, one of the things I'd like to put forward right off the bat is that I believe that in Tobago, and not just Tobago, but Trinidad and Tobago, the whole framework that looks at gender equality does not necessarily take into account the lived experience of women in the space. And I say that because I myself am a product of a single mother household, and a household in which I had to become a responsible adult at a very early age. My mother was also a single mother, and she had to leave our shores to go abroad to find work in order to help her family to survive. And in doing that, it placed me as a young girl at the head of a family to be responsible for siblings who were younger than myself. And I saw and experienced what it felt like not to be seen by a system, to be assisted by a system in cases like that. And that particular type of lifestyle caused me to kind of hone in a bit into the need for empowering women, and especially single women, single mothers in the area of their economic empowerment. So I recognize that in the system, a lot of attention is not necessarily given to the lived experience of women so as to tailor and affect the policies that are made to support women in the space.
I have to agree with you more. As single parent households, a lot of responsibility is put on the older children to participate as, in that adult role. And it's not always the easiest thing, especially for women and girls who are nurtured and seen as, of course you are going to be the caretaker. Of course, this is your role, and not, seeing it as something that you may need help with and assistance with, yeah, she'll do it, of course, because that's what she's here for. And I like that you're bringing the fact that women and girls need to be seen, not because we're women and girls, that's our obvious place, but seen and valued for the work that we're bringing to the table, for the caregiving we're bringing to the table. When we talk about caregiving, we know that women and girls are usually the ones who have to do a lot of the free work. In society, we are called upon to do a lot of the free caregiving, and we want to address that this morning in terms of the disproportionate representation of women and girls and men in that caregiving field. In terms of men, so we're having this conversation a lot about what women are doing and needing. And even in that, we need men to come into that space of caregiving for family members, for children, for the offspring of the family. What would you say could be something that could be done to, one, encourage men to get into caregiving more as a profession, but more so to be able to contribute to the family structure in terms of caregiving versus simply being maybe a financial provider?
Well, Ms. Greene, you're talking about a situation that requires a whole reculturing of our men folk and a whole reawakening of the genders in the space. We have traditionally seen that men are the breadwinners, whether because it's part of our cultural background, our religious biases, and that has meant that, as you rightfully said, women were seen more in the caregiving role. But in a modern society now where you're having different iterations of families, not just mother, father, children, you're having fathers and children. And fathers are now having to play that role of both mother and father in the space. But at the same time, there's not an institutional framework that helps our fathers to be and to function in that role with great support. So that it's a it's a big challenge in terms of having to look at the institutional support within the environment to do that, but it's also a reculturing of how we view male and female roles. When do we start in terms of changing that? Because we have always been from very young and tender age, there is male work, there's female work. There are boys' toys, there are girls' toys. So that's a whole reorientation that needs to take place within our society.
I couldn't have said it any better, Ms. Trotman. Terry?
Yes, good morning, Ms. Trotman, and welcome. So just to keep on that same, in that same vein, let me ask then, if you were to be elected, what policy change would you make to ensure that there is this valuing of the contributions that are being made or have been made by women and girls and men and boys, but what policy would you put in place, if any, to ensure that that is done or that is viewed more equitably? What do you think is the change that needs to happen? You said there's a cultural shift that has to occur, and we will acknowledge that, but how do we then engender this cultural shift? How do we start having the conversations? How does this cultural shift occur from your
Well, first of
perspective?
all, it's a conversation that we need to have with each other. Conversation and awareness. It cannot get to the policy level before we get to the talk level among ourselves. So whether it's in awareness and sensitization conversation at the community level, where those conversations come up, that we can share the perspectives that different stakeholders bring to the table. It's about the conversations that we need to have within our families, within our NGOs, within even our business structure, within the church, that talks about how we view the female and the value she brings to the table, how we view males and the value they bring, and how that interaction goes. I know on most occasions we have measured those roles according to the traditional view, and there's great importance to that. But as we go ahead in society and as we face different challenges within the modern world, we now have to look at practical strategies that can be brought to bear on how relevant are these traditional roles that we have gotten accustomed to? How relevant are they in the space now? Do we need to change new norms? So it is going to take some time, yes, but I believe it's conversations that we do need to have at every level with every stakeholder in the space bringing that to bear. So it is going to take
And
some
if I
time.
may follow up, yeah, and if I may follow up, I'm really happy that you highlighted the church, because I think the faith-based stakeholder is also a very critical part of our culture, and that the conversations are happening at all of these different levels, and it must happen there as well, to engender that shift. But at some point, I think you talked about the conversation needs to be had. I am going to suggest that the conversations have been being had for decades now. And at some point, we start to move from conversations to actions. We must start thinking as an elected official, how would you actionize some of these conversations that needed or have already been had? Um, how would you put that into action? Because it needs to go past. We need to stop doing these things as opposed to continuing to talk about it.
Some of these actions need to be in the kind of access that we would give to women to pursue certain professions or educational pursuits. One of the things that I found from my own lived experience is that women usually have unequal access to opportunities. So that
Right.
one of the things I would want to challenge would be that access to educational skills and training, especially entrepreneurial support, that can lend the kind of robust support, for wanting to use that word again, for women and girls to be able to pursue careers where they can demonstrate leadership and not be just subjected to the professions that are more care oriented or that are in the areas of sacrifice and just survival, but that they're able to pursue entrepreneurial pursuits, especially in areas that have traditionally been seen as male oriented, the export industries, the
Right.
techno industries, so
Yeah.
that we look at policies that create greater access to the training skills and finance, especially for women to
Yeah.
pursue that, especially since coming out of single parents' homes like myself, you usually want to
Right.
empower women to be economically sound and robust.
Thank you so much. We could not agree with you more. Jewel?
Yes. And before we close off with you, Ms. Trotman, I have a question, and I think this falls directly in your wheelhouse. Could you briefly share with us in terms of your experience in the tourism industry? Um, there are a lot of women who work part-time, full-time in the tourism industry. And when we look at in terms of the types of jobs, in terms of the pay and the pay scale, we are seeing disparities. How would you address this in terms of your background in the tourism industry, in terms of women being able to be paid equally and to avoid discrimination and workplace violence, because we're looking at the transactional nature of the tourism industry. Yeah.
Yes, we are. And the thing is, not just in tourism, I think generally across the board, we need to pursue legislation that ensures that you are there for the same job and you have the same qualification, you have the same ability, you are performing the same duties, male to female, that should be the basis on which um,
Yes.
Yes. Well, you know,
you know, that,
we know technology,
Yes.
how it goes, and it has frozen. I think it is
Yes.
telling us our time with Miss Trotman is up. Miss Trotman, we want to
Yes.
thank you. We want to thank you so much for being here with
Absolutely.
us and to taking the time out of your schedule. That is Miss Kay Trotman with the IDA representing the Tobago West area. She's going up for the Tobago West area, and we want to thank you for being here with us. We are going to be taking a quick break, and when we come back, because we've talked about so much, I know you all are weary. You need to take your bathroom break, get your tea, refill, get that, stretch your legs, and come right back here on Tobago Updates, where we are in part 1 of Women Voters Matters. I'm Jewel Green, and you're also here with Miss Terry Ince. And when we come back from break, we are going to be chatting with none other than Mr. Wade Carruth. So see you in a few minutes.